Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for what I think will be a really exciting panel to talk about the road to the 2026 World Cup, which I discovered today is 435 days away. I don't know about you guys, but that fills me with a mixture of intense excitement and mild dread. Hopefully you guys are feeling better about things than I am. I'd like to start the panel by talking about what the World Cup can do for your cities to make them to make them a more modern and sometimes inclusive city than they are right now. Alex, I'd like to start with you because perhaps you could also talk a little bit about your involvement in Milwaukee with the Bucks Arena, which did so much to sort of jumpstart revitalization of that downtown area.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you guys so much for being here. You know, the World Cup and what these kind of big sporting events are able to do, I think is one, just draw a lot more focus, right? I think you kind of realize when you've got a big timeline and a big event where you know you have to get something done, it just creates a little bit more focus and urgency around some of the infrastructure improvements and I think some of the other things that we're trying to do. And I think when we're looking at some of the legacy opportunities that we have here, when we're looking at all of the transportation and security apparatus and infrastructure that we're going to need to put on a really successful games, it leads to a lot more communication between our agencies. You know, we've got a particularly complicated one where we're dealing with a lot of different jurisdictions, 2 different states, many different transportation operators who for this time are all going to have to work together and who normally are operating a little bit more independently are going to have to operate all in sync, not to mention adding supplemental bus services, park and rides, et cetera. So there's a lot that we have to do when we're looking at this, but what it can do is I think lead to I think a lot more hope and optimism for kind of where the future of the city is. And when we look at, you know, what happened in Milwaukee in particular, we built this entertainment district, this Deer District in Milwaukee, which has then led to a lot more private investment, a lot more people moving to the city, and a lot more growth. And so I think when I look at something like the World Cup, I don't just look at, okay, what does that mean for those 40 days? You try to look at what is this going to mean for the next, 5 to 10 years post-World Cup. And it's something where I think we have an opportunity with the millions of people who are going to be coming to show people, hey, this is a place you want to come on vacation. This is a place where you want to, come visit again. But it's also an opportunity to show companies and people who are going to be making investment decisions that this is a place that you're going to want to invest, that this has got the excitement and the energy and the infrastructure that you need to start to invest your dollars and be a part of the community. And so that's where I think these type of major sporting events can play a big role, not just in the immediate economic impact where we're looking at, close to $2 to $4 billion in our region, but I think the post-event impact of having had so many people here, being a part of it and saying, you know what, this is where I think I want to invest our next dollars.
Monica, what do you think in terms of Dallas? What can we expect the World Cup to do?
Well, first off, your first intro there, you said 400 and something days does XYZ. It caused me a lot of anxiety. I'm just wanted to clear that up for you there. No, from Dallas, I think very similar to New York, New Jersey, and just really fresh of mind because I honestly just got off of a virtual city council meeting of, what are the key priorities? What are each individual district? So a lot of legacy discussions from small business opportunities. How can the small businesses be integrated in there, be a vendor, access to be able to even get not necessarily tickets to go to a match, but how can they be involved in the other planning processes of it? Human trafficking and sustainability efforts are very key, and we've got very established working groups there, and maybe a little bit different than, or a priority than maybe we've had on the other major sporting events that we've had. There's a pretty good intensity here from a World Cup standpoint. But overall, We've hosted many major events throughout the time, but we're really trying to look at it from a programming standpoint, whether it's transportation, whether it's some of our safety security, to unite across our region when we have to do this, because we've got at least 4 or 5 major cities. At least we're all in one state, so I don't have Alex's issue there, but a lot of different cities and counties. So how can we unite and create the programming that, maybe we should have been doing already, but this World Cups give us a great opportunity across those different cities to share information and kind of grow as a region together.
Yeah, the World Cup, as you mentioned, is all your cities have hosted many sports events before. The World Cup is a kind of different animal to a lot of those. It's not just the biggest sports event in the world when it happens, but it's also, probably a logistical, technological, security, riddle that has to be unpacked every 4 years. Chris, what can you tell us about what the sort of unique challenges and some of the sort of unique opportunities that and an event of that scale brings to somewhere like Houston?
Yeah, so this is the largest sporting event in the world. You've said it. Nothing of its type has ever been done before. When you factor in 104 matches spread out over 3 countries, 16 cities, all the different moving parts that go along with this, from transportation to safety and security to legacy. There's just so much that goes into this. And the efforts to coordinate this are intense. But as it pertains to your question around safety and security, it is the #1 priority for all of us, right? And we need to make sure that our events, not just the matches themselves, but all of the locations around the fan festival, the assets, the people are all protected. And there's a very coordinated effort going on in all of the host cities in coordination with local, state, and federal officials on how to ensure that there's no black marks on this, right? Is that we get through this event and it comes out as a very positive thing for our entire country and all of our host cities. So I think for all of us on this panel, it's probably something that we think about the most, we probably worry about the most, but luckily in each of our markets, we've got some of the best people, the most experts in each area working on this through committees and other areas to, I know our org chart on safety and security seems like it's 50, 70 people deep, because you just have so many different moving parts associated with it.
Zaileen, what about in San Francisco? What does the sort of challenge and opportunities of hosting the World Cup bring to the Bay Area?
Yeah, and thank you, Jonathan, and everyone for being here. It actually is great because we all get to spend some more time together in person, so it's good. I think, some really easy commonalities that all of us are experiencing in terms of just general economic impact, the things that we want to leave from a quantitative perspective, and then a qualitative legacy perspective in all of our markets. I think for the Bay, there's a couple things that are more of a focus for us. The first is we had a pretty rough time during COVID. The city and the region as a whole, all 9 counties, experienced both reality in terms of what happened to our economy and people living in the Bay, and then perception in terms of what the media actually talked about in the Bay Area. And so things like Super Bowl 60 next year, the NBA All-Star Game that we just finished, and the FIFA World Cup help our city and the residents in our city and region put their head up a little bit and walk around with a little bit more swagger and a little bit more pride of like, hey, we are a city out of the 30 that bid in the United States that are hosting a FIFA World Cup, and that is a competitive process, and we did something right to be able to bring that event into our market. And so some of it is just the feeling of people in our region that are actually just so proud now to be in the Bay, to live in a city that's hosting 3 of the most globally recognized sporting events in our region. So that's one. And hard to put a metric against that, but it's real, and you can feel it when you come back into the Bay now. I think the second is, in relation to what we're all talking about this week is, there's an expectation when you come into the Bay that you are going to see the future. And we expect ourselves to lean in to that. It's almost a responsibility that we have. And so the partners that we've signed on, the people that we're talking to who are all kind of big and little tech, are excited to be able to bring that technology forward As soon as you get off the plane, your experience when you get off the plane, what you're looking at, how you're interacting and communicating with your friends, to how you're moving around the city, to what you're experiencing at a fan fest, to how do you get to a game and back. Those are all things from a technology perspective that we will lean into because it's the expectation when you come into the Bay that that's what you're going to get. So I think those are the two things, not necessarily complications or challenges, but opportunities that we're seeing that the World Cup will bring for us.
Thank you. I want to touch as well on the sort of subject of community, which is something that all of you guys have mentioned so far. You know, the last major international sports event like this was the Olympics last summer in Paris, a city that's not famous for embracing tourists with open arms, but did last summer. Anyone who was there will know that the Parisians, you know, really welcomed the world to Paris. What are you guys doing to sort of try and bring the community along to hosting, you know, a huge event like this where, you know, hundreds of thousands of fans will be coming to the city? Meg, I'd like to start with you because, believe it or not, the World Cup is just one of the things that Philadelphia is hosting next year, along with, I think, the PGA Championship, March Madness is happening there, MLB All-Star Game, and the small matter of America's 250th birthday.
Correct, that is right. It's a very full year for the city of Philadelphia, as well as the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as Pittsburgh is also hosting the NFL Draft. So if you have a bucket list related to sports, do I have a state for you? It has been a really intriguing time in terms of planning because of all of the, what many might view as competing interests in the city of Philadelphia. And I think something that's different even in terms of our layout, as I was listening to everyone speak, is that one of the reasons that Philadelphia was successful in winning its bid is because of the compact nature of the city. The ability for fans to take our Broad Street subway line and to be from Center City to our sports complex in 11 minutes on an express line. The ability to walk river to river in under 90 minutes. So there is a compactness to the city that was very appealing to FIFA in its selection. And really, if you know anything about Philadelphia, it is a city of neighborhoods, right? And we take a great deal of pride in the neighborhoods and really in our history and heritage, not just in terms of the 250th anniversary, but also in the way that immigration has really fueled who Philadelphia is from a diversity standpoint, dating all the way back, you know, to European immigration, which brought soccer into Philadelphia, and now continues to grow as we see increases in our population related to immigration from Africa, the Caribbean nations, and South America. Again, infusing soccer into the city. So for us, the community engagement around what we're doing for FIFA World Cup was very much linked to how we were going to deliver the tournament. And so we are going to be hosting our FIFA Fan Festival in Lemon Hill Park, which is a 104-acre park that sits right behind the Philadelphia Museum of Art, or as I remind everyone, is 0.4 miles from the Rocky statue and the Rocky Steps, to help geolocate that. But the reason that this is important is because it is surrounded by 13 distinct neighborhoods. And so there is a significant amount of community engagement that is occurring right now because it's a park that has been underinvested in. And so we are using Lemon Hill as an opportunity for legacy building. We are working on infrastructure that will allow us to put 25,000 people per day into our FIFA Fan Festival with all of the accoutrements of the watch party, sponsor activations, food and beverage. But the goal is that after the World Cup and after the FIFA Fan Festival is brought down, that we will invest further in leaving the park better than what it was previously. And that might mean new gazebos, a new playground. We are working with the community to help them to inform what those long-term legacy components of the park are. But ultimately in 2027, when someone says, what is the legacy of FIFA World Cup in Philadelphia, our hope is that Lemon Hill stands as both a new area that the city of Philadelphia can use for events that can host up to 20,000 people, but also that we're leaving a park that is far more far more supportive of the communities around them, even as small as this might seem, but adding ADA accessibility and sidewalks to where there are none now. So we're excited about that, but that's really our community focus.
I think also when you're looking at the community aspect of it, you've got to think about the non-match days in particular. There are, for MetLife, only 80,000 people can fit there, right? There's a finite amount of people that can go to the stadium, but there are going to be millions of people coming to all of our cities who are all going to be looking for things to do. And then on non-match days, they're still going to be there and looking for things to do. And so when we talk to people around New Jersey and around New York, it's about, hey, how do you take advantage of the opportunity of things that are going on non-match days in our city? How do you get people to get outside of, of the five boroughs or outside of, Jersey City and Hoboken and to other parts of the states? Because that's where, you might have 3 or 4 days in between a match. How do you get people to experience the rest of the state, to experience all that that New York and New Jersey have to offer? And I think that's something where there's real opportunity to connect with some of your sister cities, depending on who's playing in your region, but also to, I think, take advantage of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We are not going to have, this many people at one time focused on our region like they are for the World Cup. And so the ability to reach them and convince them to have an authentic experience is I think, a unique opportunity that can lead to, tons of economic impact down the road.
I always think that the U.S. is one of the greatest places to watch the World Cup because every city has, all the different nationalities. It's like sort of spontaneous fan fests that spring up in different parts of the city. Zaileen, what can the Bay Area do to sort of harness that internationalism of the World Cup in the community?
Yeah, to be honest, it's something that we've had to really teach is the wrong word, but inform FIFA about how I think most of our communities are built and how fans engage in each of our cities and regions. The Bay Area, much like all of these guys, has 9 county, very vast, diverse geography base, and then different types of people with different backgrounds in each of those counties and cities that engage in soccer and sport in different ways. Some who are huge sports fans, some who come for the food and the culture, some who come for the music. And so what we've worked really hard to, internally in our own region, and then as we work with FIFA, is to educate and inform how people actually want to engage. And if you try to force people in the Bay Area all to one place at an official fan fest in the city of San Francisco, they are going to come after me, and I don't have time for that. So, so instead, right, there may be an official fan fest in the city of San Francisco with a great backdrop, with the Golden Gate Bridge and all the things. In addition, we will likely have, to your point, watch parties in all of the counties in the Bay Area, because a fan in San Jose is going to celebrate and engage in soccer in a different way than a fan in Oakland is going to do it, in a different way than a fan in Napa and Sonoma are going to do it as well. And so we have to allow for that to happen. In fact, if we don't, we're actually not allowing for growth of the game and growth of the sport and engagement in the way that I think is meaningful to them. And so that's what we're working on right now is almost a decentralized structure, allowing for kind of mass disbursement of the sport. And in that there comes challenges, right? It's how you get people in and around. It's how you pay for all of that. It's how you manage for public safety. There are challenges in doing that, but I think the opportunity for sure outweighs the challenges, and so that's what we're looking to do.
Chris, what about Houston? How are you sort of bringing the community along there, and how has been the sort of reaction so far from the community of Houston to hosting World Cup games?
Yeah, so Houston is a very diverse city. We like to think of ourselves as one of the most diverse cities in North America. There's over 140 languages spoken. 1 in 4 people in Houston are foreign-born. So there's a great international flavor to our city, and that, of course, aligns very well with the world's game and hosting a World Cup. So with all of that said, Houston is the reaction from the community has been, the response has been amazing. people everywhere, open arms, the excitement about putting this on. We're hosting 7 matches in Houston. We like to say it's the equivalent of hosting 7 Super Bowls in 20 days, which people can kind of visually understand and get when you're going around town. Because quite frankly, most people don't get the World Cup, if we're being honest. They understand, yeah, it's a big thing, but I don't think everybody understands how big of a thing it is. So we have to constantly, to Zaileen's point, go around, inform, and educate people on the size and the scope of this event and what it really means. I was thinking as Alex was talking about a story that came up recently. We had some FIFA officials in town and we were doing some hotel business, and the FIFA official was talking about the World Cup in Russia in 2018, and he was telling this general manager of a hotel how Peru was playing in some far eastern city in Russia. I don't remember the name of the city, but that's a long way from Peru to far east Russia, and you know, hope there's no Peruvian soccer fans in here, but it's not quite Brazil, right, or Argentina, if you will. And so anyway, very passionate fan base is where I'm going with this. 40,000 Peruvians made their way from Peru to Far East Russia, while only 14,000 of them had tickets to the game. So 26,000 people just wanted to be there. And so when you think about our cities, and how connected we are globally through our airport systems and other means, and how diverse we already are, you know, our cities are going to be experiencing something unlike they've ever seen before. It's going to be quite epic in a very, very positive way. So with that, I think we're educating everybody, we're informing everybody, and the reaction has just been amazing. Everybody wants to be involved.
Monica, are Cowboys fans braced for the fact that the stadium is about to be overrun by soccer players and soccer fans?
Well, actually, good point, since you brought that up. One of our key initiatives starting after June is to teach people in Dallas how to football. You could take that a different way based on our Cowboy season this past year, so don't take it that way.
I didn't make that joke at all.
You didn't,
Thank
don't
you.
take it that way. But like seriously, to ensure that people understand the sport of soccer, how it's different, the passion that goes along with it, how the international fans are much different than what we see on a regular basis from a collegiate sporting event. Even WrestleMania had a lot of international, but if you've never been to a World Cup, I've been to pretty much every major event out there. It's just something totally different, but it's the energy and the passion that goes along with it is pretty special as well. So trying to kind of roll out our Texas hospitality, but then also like let's educate ourselves on the different teams once we know them, hopefully during the draw. Doesn't mean that's the only people that will be coming. Another key element for us is how do we engage with the broadcasters? Because, you know, from a region standpoint, Fort Worth is a little bit different than the vibe that Dallas gives off, it's a little bit different than Arlington and vice versa. So we want them to be able to share all of those messages, but knowing that we're going to be host of the International Broadcast Center and have the broadcasters, media, and journalists there maybe for a more extended period of time, how do we get our messaging out to them? How can we tell our story for a much longer period of time, but have them tell the full regional piece as well? So that's been a key focus of ours, of getting in front of the media and broadcasters and kind of layering in then also the 9 matches and the other planning that kind of goes along with that.
I also want to discuss legacy, which is something that you've all spoken about to some degree already. You know, when we think about the World Cup, you know, the last World Cup match was played in a gleaming new stadium in a city that didn't exist 20 years earlier. It was just a patch of sand in the desert. Obviously, that allows you know, for great legacy to be left there. But what are you guys doing? None of you are building new stadiums. None of you are having to you know, build cities from out of nowhere. What are you? How do you sort of approach the idea of legacy when sort of major infrastructure projects like that aren't a part of what you're doing?
Well, I think the 2026 is interesting for a variety of reasons. Not only is this a very different tournament for FIFA in the fact that they've expanded the number of teams, the number of matches, the number of days. It's across 3 countries. So this is a very different tournament for them, but also it is one where the infrastructure is inherited, right? In the last several cycles of the World Cup, the stadiums have been built. And so that poses some challenges sometimes because, again, we're balancing what we have with what expectations might be when you go into a country like Qatar or Russia and build stadiums from scratch. They can be absolutely custom and in any way that you need, but all of our stadiums have to return to they are cross-functional, and first and foremost, they were built for the other National Football League. So we have to maintain that. So it really does make you think about legacy in a much different way, especially if you think about 1994, right? 30 years ago, and I'm not going to steal your thunder because you know this better than anyone, Chris, but the World Cup in 1994 was really the beginning, a very beginning of soccer for the United States. And so when I think about legacy related to 26, I think there are three things that in Philadelphia that we really focus on. We certainly, because that infrastructure isn't there necessarily, we want to make sure that the experience is as seamless as possible. How can we do things better in terms of systems and processes that will allow for both residents and tourists to enjoy this event and to feel part of it, because that's really incumbent upon us as host cities. It is very easy to focus almost entirely on the fan base that will travel to come to our host cities, but there are 1.4 million people in the city of Philadelphia, and so it's important that they also feel welcome and part of this really exciting event. I think too, in legacy, I think one of the areas that I hope we don't forget in all of the planning is that this is a moment to capture imagination among a new generation of potential sports fans, right? When you think about young kids who are either growing up playing soccer, who maybe have never seen a sporting event like this come to their city, this is an opportunity for them to be part of that next generation of incredible growth for the sport, and we cannot forget that. And I think last but not least, the legacy from Philadelphia, but also in recognizing that we are part of a more national event, is that this is a moment of pride. We are all part of the United States delivering this event. We are not just Philadelphia. We are part of a collective. There are 11 cities working together, and this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate the absolute best of who we are and what America is to the world, and to help define that for those who maybe have never been here or who may have questions about where we are right now, given the current climate.
I think also on legacy, this is a chance for us to, I think, as not just host cities, but as a country, to show that we should be the premier place to host these kind of events. And I think that's where I think there's the real opportunity and where I think we're going to succeed the most. I think when people look at the World Cup in the United States, they're going to say this was the biggest and best World Cup that they'd ever seen. And I think that's the legacy that'll then show, okay, we should get the 2031 Women's World Cup. There are these other sports and entertainment events that'll be coming. Maybe it shouldn't be another 30 years before America gets the World Cup again. Maybe it shouldn't be another 30 years before we get the Summer Olympics or events like that. And I think, when this goes well and when this is successful, I think it will show to the world, and especially to people putting on the event, that if you want to have the biggest event, if you want to have the best event, while there are some hurdles and obstacles to sometimes doing something in a country as big and diverse, and also with so many different localities and different types of government and funding sources, but the benefits outweigh that. And I think that's the real opportunity that we have as a country, as individual host cities, to I think just show the world that if you want to have the best event, you want to do it in America.
I'll take a bit of a different spin on legacy. There's dozens and dozens of ways of how our cities can be positively impacted, but Meg touched on this a little bit, is how do we use the World Cup and the power of it and leverage it to help grow the game in this country? And the World Cup first came here in 1994. Soccer barely existed in the United States, and FIFA brought the World Cup to the US in '94 on a promise that we would start a domestic league. And that launched Major League Soccer in 1996. And while Major League Soccer kind of had its struggles along the way, it's now grown into one of the elite soccer leagues around the world. It was number 2 in the world in attendance last year. And I mean, we have Lionel Messi playing in our league now. But not only Major League Soccer, between MLS, NWSL, now we have the USL, we have the USL Super League Women's League. There's over 80 professional soccer teams in this country. I'll say that again, there's over 80 professional soccer teams in this country, and there's another 20 that are set to be announced between the men's and women's side. And over 30 stadiums have been built for these teams, and billions of dollars have been put in. But that's on the professional level. But for those of you who are familiar with the youth soccer level, whether you've played it yourself or you have kids, it is a very organized sport in this country, right? You have to play for a club at certain fields, and it's also very, very expensive. So what that means is not everybody has access to the game. So I think all of us are thinking about how do we, on that level, provide more access to the game and give the youth in underserved communities the ability to play, whether that's refurbishing fields or creating programs in our markets that kids don't have to go out to the suburbs and pay $3,000 a year to play youth soccer. So I think this World Cup is going to have is going to be a huge moment in taking the game to an even further level as U.S. tries to develop itself as a soccer nation and kind of catch up with the great soccer nations around the world.
I think the interesting thing for the World Cup too is, and you can hear it just in how we've all answered, is that there's actually no limit to the number of things that can be done from a legacy perspective, right? There is, maybe the only limit really is time of trying to prioritize what you think will have the most impact and focus on that. But there's definitely just macro legacy initiatives. Meg and Alex both talked about just impact to the country and what it means for the United States and how this can serve as not only a test case, but a moment where people realize that events should come here. The Olympic Games are coming to the United States 2 years after the World Cup. Right? And so we actually serve as a really good, I don't want to say testing ground, but the first event where people will experience, government stakeholders will experience, transportation agencies will experience what an event like this needs and how to facilitate an event like this in this country. So there's some, the growth of soccer in the game and how you make sure it's inclusive and youth can play. These are macro legacy initiatives that I think all of us are thinking through to make sure that we are prioritizing and have the most impact out of them. I think locally then, in each of our cities, we focus on the things that I think might be a little bit more nuanced and have a specific and particular impact to that city or region. So Meg talked about Lemon Hill and the park there, and I know each of us are thinking about, Alex, we have a similar situation in the Bay Area. There's 29 transportation agencies. I didn't even know that before this job. There's 29 transportation agencies that don't coordinate typically, and our job is actually to bring them together so that there is a seamless transportation and logistical experience in the Bay Area that actually can last beyond the World Cup, so that if you live in the Bay, that's actually the norm instead of what happens today. Something else that we've actually started to think about in the Bay Area and launched a couple of months ago is when an event like this, like the Super Bowl or the FIFA World Cup comes into your market, very typically there's a workforce, sometimes paid workforce, sometimes a volunteer workforce, that is needed to host that event. A lot of times in the thousands of people that need to be hired and or brought together. Many times those individuals, might not be local to your market and definitely are not thought of as people that can actually be certified and have long-term work following that temporary job. And so something that we needed in the Bay Area, frankly, because of labor laws in the state, because that our unemployment rate was very, very low, we needed to bring people into the labor pool. And so we launched a program called Bridge to Work, brings people into the labor market, certifies them so that after the event, they actually have long-term work after that with some of our teams, with our transportation agencies, so on and so forth. that's an issue that is pretty specific right now to the Bay because of what we went through during COVID, that we're trying to use the events to authentically solve. And all of us have a different thing, I think, that the World Cup can help us solve in our market, and that's the priority that we place on it.
That's great. Monica, I'm just going to give you one chance to answer that question too, before we toss it to the audience. I think we've baked in some time for audience questions. I don't know if there's a microphone out there, but Monica, you go, and then I'll take questions from the audience after that.
Yeah, I think my colleagues have answered most of all of that. I'll kind of add on to something that Chris said in terms of the youth and the development there. About 4, maybe 5 years ago, we did an assessment just over 4 of the Arlington, Fort Worth, Frisco, and Dallas of the number of soccer fields that we were short based off of demand. And just under those 4, we were 150 soccer fields short. Now, I'm not sitting up here saying that I'm going to be able to build 150 soccer fields and we're going to get caught up, and I'm sure 150 is probably 300 if we did a full assessment. But that will be a key piece of ours, how we're also able to utilize this Men's World Cup to fuel women's growth. Yes, we do want to be a host in 2031. Hopefully, we have a new team that just started this year on the professional side, so how can we lift them through this World Cup? And then a lot of emphasis on corporate development and utilizing the World Cup to continue to position the DFW region on a global stage and know that, yes, we are open for business. We have a lot of Fortune 500 companies there, a lot of people moving to the DFW area, and how can we further grow that? So we've got a lot of work on the business community that are trying to identify ways that through that growth that can be an additional legacy.
Thank you. Okay, I think we'll take some questions from the audience now. I don't see a microphone out there, so you could just yell your question at me and I'll try and repeat it for the panel here. Halftime show, Alex.
I think it's great. I mean, I think what you're looking at is just kind of, again, the growth of the sport and the merging of, again, like the entertainment aspect of what sports is. I think one of the things we do sometimes forget is sports is entertainment, right? The consumer is the fan. You want to do things that are going to make fans excited, more engaged. How do we open up and get new people involved? And I think a halftime show, when you look at the success of a Super Bowl halftime show, when I look at, my friends who come over to watch the Super Bowl, I've got people who want to watch the game, and then I've got people who are there to watch the halftime show. But before the halftime show, they got to watch the game. They got to sit through it. And I think what you end up doing is you start creating more fans. You start to get people who then start to say, oh, you know what? I actually enjoy watching soccer. Like, this is a fun sport. There's a lot going on. I'm now going to watch this more, and I'm going to be more engaged and more a part of it. And so I think the more things you can do to try to grow the game and attach yourself to other type of stars that are going to help open it up to a wider audience, I think it's great. I think when you start to then look at what it then does from a logistical standpoint, look, this is what you have to then figure out to make sure that the halftime show isn't ruining the field. You've got to make sure that the halftime show is not too long, where people are then getting stiff, and then the gameplay isn't as good. This will be the first time that the World Cup is doing something like this, so players are going to have to adjust. But again, this is what growth is. You have to do some trade-offs to make sure that you can grow the sport and continue to make it more exciting and reach new fans. So I think this is great. I'm excited to see who the halftime performance is going to be, and I think it's going to be an overall big win for the World Cup that they're finally moving towards this.
No breaking news?
I cannot break any news to date, mostly because I don't know.
We've got a question back here.
Yeah, thank you. This has been a great conversation. I'm just curious if you have thought about using any emerging technologies for this World Cup? We heard on the Coinbase panel, for example, that Russia or Tokyo use some blockchain technology for ticketing tickets. So just wondering, any emerging technologies in mind for the World Cup?
So I think it's important to note a couple of things. From a ticketing standpoint, FIFA controls ticketing. So there could be emerging technologies that will be used and employed by FIFA in terms of ticketing, but that is something that will trickle down to the host cities once FIFA rolls out the ticketing program. So from our perspective, there are certain things that FIFA controls, and then there are other things that we as the host cities are in charge of. So I think it's a great question, and certainly one that we will be happy to pass along to our friends at FIFA. But I would expect that technology employment or deployment will come from them when ticketing opens, likely in Q3 of 25. That's what we would expect. I think in terms of our own host cities, again, the infrastructure that is in place at NFL stadiums already employs a significant amount of technology. So right now, it's leveraging that technology and anything new that may be going in ahead of the 25-26 season that could benefit FIFA World Cup during those summer months. And we would expect that as host cities, we'll allow our stadiums to take the lead on that. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think for the Bay, obviously we're looking at a number of different emerging technologies that we, to Meg's point, can control within the requirements and rules that FIFA puts in front of us. And so ticketing will not be one of those places because, to Meg's point, that's not under our purview or control. But fan experience, for sure, is a place where we're looking at emerging technology. In the workforce development program that I talked about a few minutes ago, how employees communicate with each other. We're talking to a tech partner right now in using emerging technology to facilitate that communication. We have this concept called a tech petting zoo, which would be very appropriate in the Bay Area, where you will actually be able to experience kind of Kickstarter technologies as part of your fan experience when you walk through the Bay. But again, like that is very expected when you come into the Bay Area, and we lean into that, even if it doesn't work, even if you're in beta, to kind of think through what technology will look like as you kind of think about the city of the future or the fan experience of the future. But again, only in the areas that we are permitted to do so as it relates to FIFA.
I think we might have time for two more, and I've got one at the front right here.
Hi there, I'm Stephanie, the founder of Hootology. Hi, old friend. Have done a great deal of fan studies and understand the psychology of fandom. And my curiosity in this moment, the brand of the US right now is not incredibly welcoming. And the World Cup is really about connecting and bringing in fans from all over the globe. So I'm curious what is happening behind the scenes or what needs to happen to ensure the beauty of the sport and the beauty of fandom and the connection that can still happen in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the beauty of sports, is that it's normally able to kind of bypass politics or global events, right? You look at, a lot of times, the Olympics, countries who are, not maybe always enjoying each other, or sometimes, or at war, are able to actually come together and participate in the Olympics. And I think when you look at the World Cup, we're going to be looking at the same thing. No matter what is going on in the world, sports has generally played and has been used as a tool to bring people together and a way for us to kind of, I think show that that we're better off when we're all welcoming and working with each other. And so, I think when we're looking at the World Cup, we're kind of looking at this as, how do we make sure that we kind of are able to use the purpose of sport and I think what sports has always symbolized, which is good, friendly competition. And I think that's what we're looking forward to for this World Cup. And I think when you look at all of these big global sporting events, you're dealing with complex geopolitical issues, but sports in general has always been a place where I think on these mega events, countries and athletes have been able to come together and be part of these competitions. And so I think we're looking at nothing different for this World Cup.
Yeah, I would also just add, I think as something that I oftentimes share, is that the demand will be there, right? I think that that is a piece that it's very easy for us right now to say no one will come. I hear that very frequently because of what's happening. But in Qatar, in the first 24 hours the tickets were open, there were 23 million inquiries for tickets to go to Qatar, right? So the demand around the world is there, and that regardless of geopolitical tensions, sports is a uniter. And I think that the national pride and passion that people have for their football team, their soccer team, is something that we as Americans, I think, will be, incredibly moved by. And I think that's a real opportunity for us as a nation to witness that outpouring in our own nation.
23 million tickets demanded in the 24 hours after they banned booze. Amazing. Who else? Yes, here, right at the front. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mathieu Labelle, the founder and CEO of the Wheelskip, the company that deployed the bicycle parking for Olympics in Paris. My question is very simple. Do you think bicycle can be implemented to go to the stadiums and fan zone and also be part of the legacy?
Yes, I will answer from a Philadelphia perspective. One of the probably biggest communications challenges or opportunities that we will have in Philadelphia is that our FIFA Fan Festival will be pedestrian only with no cars or parking. And as we all operate NFL stadiums, or have operators of NFL stadiums, we are used to the traditional tailgates, the 22 to 25,000 cars that come to those stadiums, and that will be significantly limited in World Cup. So it's really about, for us, more of an education of our own fans, of American fans, around the lack of reliance on car transportation to our fan festivals, fan zones, or the matches themselves. Well, certainly there will be some. Our goal in Philadelphia is to highlight the importance of pedestrian, bicycle, e-bike. We're very lucky in Philadelphia and many of the cities, I think, on this stage. Independence Blue Cross has long sponsored Indigo, which is our bike share program in the city, which has continued to grow into our neighborhoods. So we look to that as being an important part of deployment. We really want to encourage people to have the experience of the walking into FanFest, the walking to the stadium, the use of public transit. So for us, that's an important part of our sustainability efforts. And our hope is that the legacy that comes from it, that there will just be a greater amount of comfort and an interest and reliance on the use of bicycle, pedestrian, and public transit coming out of this from the city.
One more, and this will be the last one, and we'll just take it right at the front here, if that's okay. Thank you.
Hi, this is a political question. The fact that the president has been alienating many countries, Europe, Canada, Mexico, and many other countries, and FIFA is a world, event. Any thoughts on how he'll still be president in 2026? Any thoughts on dealing with the global nature of it, inviting the world to America at the same time when America, the president anyway, is being alienating globally?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think as we've seen, the president has said that the World Cup is a very important event to the United States, one that he, when he was president during his first term, helped pitch and bring here. And I think as we're looking at this and we're looking at the World Cup, we've seen, Gianni, the president of FIFA, visiting the White House. There's about to be a White House task force that's going to be set up to ensure that that the games go smoothly. So I think at the end of the day, when we look at this again, despite any geopolitical tensions, whether it's with the United States or any other countries that are having them with any other countries, sports has always been viewed as a uniter. And the games go on, right? This is what I think we want to, one, teach our kids and young generations, which is, this is kind of the meaning and purpose of sport, which is no matter what's going on, what happens on the field, and then off the field, the athletes get together and can be good sports about it. And so I think that's what, that's one of the symbolisms of the World Cup, of the Olympics, of any of these major sporting events, where we're bringing lots of countries together who, despite any of the differences or issues that they're having with each other, the games go on. And I think when we look at the commitment from this administration to ensuring that the World Cup is going to be successful, the commitment from all these host committees and all the host cities and our local governments to make sure that these games are successful. The most important thing to us right now is making sure that we're able to help throw the best World Cup that's ever been thrown, because that's going to lead to more events coming to the United States, and us being able to, I think, leaving a playbook and a manual really for how future events can go in this country. And so I'm really excited about what the World Cup is gonna do for the United States. I'm really excited about what we're gonna be able to show the world. And I think this is going to be the best sporting event that's not ever been played in the United States, but that the world has ever seen.
If that hasn't got you excited, I don't know what will. I think you'd just like to thank our panel for what was a fantastic session, and to wish them all luck, all the best of luck for next year and delivering what, as Alex said, I'm sure will be a very a fantastic tournament and a huge success. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.